Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy A12 and see how this specific phone holds up in 2023. Now what's funny is the A12, which came out in 2020, was a very interesting phone that Samsung made. Now for some of you who don't know, their A lineup is their budget tier phones, and clearly these things I would say don't age as well as their main Galaxy that come out that year as well, but I will still tell you, still a very interesting phone. And if you want to buy some phones I would probably recommend more than this thing, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy A12, we do actually have a 6.5 inch PLS LCD panel on the front. And one thing I will definitely tell you, again, their A lineup is not supposed to be a super expensive phone. It's supposed to be a budget tier phone, and that's kind of what you're getting here. You're getting a fairly budget tier phone, which is honestly very nice. They don't last as long as in terms of software. They don't have crazy amounts of features inside of them, but they are still going to be supported for a bit of time. And one thing's for sure, they're going to be designed pretty well. And that's exactly what you're getting here. Although it's a PLS LCD panel, it's 720p, and definitely the panel is not the best thing going here. I like the design of this panel. There's a little bit of bezel at the bottom. There's like a infinity V or U display, whatever they call it. So clearly it's not the best looking thing anymore. But I still really like how Samsung kind of approached this design. They could have easily threw a bunch of bezel on it. They could have still put a home button on or something like that. May not have sold as well, but still, it's a very interesting approach from Samsung for their whole entire A lineup. And I am a massive fan of it, and I just hope they continue going down this road, because it's a very smart thing that they're doing in my opinion. So that in and of itself is a really nice thing that Samsung is basically doing with their A lineup. Now we do have the front camera. On the bottom we do have a USB-C port, which is great. We also have a microSD card slot on this phone as well, which is another awesome asset. Having a microSD card slot on a phone like this is beautiful, and that honestly makes me feel super comfortable when I'm buying a phone like this. I can just go ahead and continue to use it and be still in a very good spot. So you can expand your storage, and even at this moment in 2020, this phone kind of almost came out in 2021. A lot of phones were already removing their microSD card slots. The Galaxy S20 still had it at the time, but it's still a cool thing that we kind of had going for with this specific phone as well. So on the back side, this is where things get a little bit complicated. So we have a full-on plastic back here. So this is where I would say Samsung started to really kind of like make this phone feel more cheaper, if that makes sense. So it's a full-on plastic back. Nothing super crazy, nothing super complicated here. We have our camera set up like kind of tucked away in the top left corner, but it's a pretty big back, which is awesome. And that's kind of it on the outside. There are clearly some things that are missing here, which I'm going to tell you here, but I would say from the body, from like the visual standpoint, it looks better than you would probably imagine. But there's a few things that you have to remember that this phone doesn't have, that a lot of phones nowadays do actually have. So there's no IP certification on this phone, and that in and of itself can deter a lot of people away from buying a phone like this. If you're very active and you're around dust all the time or water all the time and you drop water on this phone, it's probably going to damage it some way. If you're like lucky, it won't, but it could happen. Also, there's no wireless charging on this phone either. So if you're somebody who wants to go ahead and wirelessly charge this phone, there's no way to do it. You're pretty much stuck with a wired charging method. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there, if I'm being honest. Now, moving on to pretty much, it's interesting, probably one of the more interesting things here, which is the camera setup. Now, this thing has a 48 megapixel wide angle lens, 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, 2 megapixel macro lens, and then a 2 megapixel depth lens, and it also has an 8 megapixel 1080p camera on the front. Now, you can do 1080p on the front and the back, which honestly I think would probably be okay for a majority of people watching this video. If you're planning on buying a phone like this, I hope you're not planning on using this camera, because it is not going to be a good experience. But the interesting thing with the Galaxy A12 is that this specific phone at its core, the camera number can be misleading. The megapixel count with 48 megapixels, very misleading. The 4 cameras, very misleading as well. The only 2 cameras that are important are the wide and the ultra wide camera, and that ultra wide camera is at 5 megapixels. It should be like higher than that. It should be like at least 12 or 10. So the fact that, I see a lot of manufacturers do this. They just fill up the camera lenses with like fake lenses. OnePlus has done this before too. So I think with this type of camera, you're going to probably have a very average experience, but you're going to pay like $100 or something for this phone. So you're kind of getting what you'd expect, in my opinion. So from that perspective, this type of phone, take it as you will, but it's clearly not a phone that I would recommend buying in terms of the camera. And it's just, again, one of those things you have to keep in mind. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there. Now moving on to the software and the longevity portion of this phone. So this thing started off with Android 10. I believe it got all the way up to Android 11 or maybe even Android 12, but since then this phone has been pretty much discontinued. It's not going to continue getting software support there either, so it's pretty much at its last leg of software. So as of this point, that's probably one of like the reasons why I wouldn't recommend buying this phone anymore, is because its software is already kind of outdated. And that's kind of what happens when you're getting a phone like this. I mean, I don't want you to go buy a phone that's already going to be discontinued with software, and that's almost exactly what's going on when you're getting a phone like this. So, like I said, don't think that this phone is a bad phone. Like, it was still a very good phone when it first came out for its price tag, but I clearly don't think it's worth buying anymore, mostly because it's pretty much outdated with software. So, keep that in mind, but that's pretty much how I feel with this specific phone and the software standpoint. Now, moving on to the performance side of things. This specific phone has that MediaTek Helio P35 chipset inside. I've never even remembered that before. But the RAM is the funniest thing. It starts at 2 gigabytes of RAM. There's a model with 3, 4, and 6 gigabytes of RAM inside of it. So you can start off at 2 and you can go up to 6. I think I had like the 2 or 3 gigabyte, RAM model of this phone. And I will probably tell you, this is not a phone where, like, if you're getting these amount of like differences and variances in RAM, you are going to have massive differences in the ways people are going to experience this type of phone. So with a Galaxy A12, clearly this phone, I don't think is a good performing phone anymore. But at that time, back in 2021, I'm sure it was pretty decent. And 2021 doesn't seem that long ago, but that was over 2 years ago. And it's almost been 3 years kind of when this phone came out. So take it as you will. But this isn't really a phone that's going to be that great in performance anymore either. I hate to just kind of keep bashing this phone over and over again, but that's kind of what happens when you're getting a Galaxy A after a few years. And keep in mind, this is like the oldest Galaxy A phone. So this is the cheapest one, and this is one of the although it's not like the oldest one, it's the oldest one when like it's the next successor. So I think they do like the up until like the A70s, and those are like the ones that are refreshed last or something, I don't remember. But take it as you will, but this phone isn't really that good of a performing device either. So to kind of bleed into the battery side as well, it has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Again, that's a massive size battery to have on a phone like this. I think that matches like the S23 Ultra, which is insane. So again, it probably wouldn't be the first like battery life that I would look at, be like, oh, this phone's, it's worth it because of the battery, but it is a very good size battery, and it's honestly probably one of its biggest assets. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll tell you is, I honestly don't think the Galaxy A12 is worth buying anymore, pretty much in any capacity. You are much better off buying a phone like a Samsung Galaxy S20 and S21. You can buy a Galaxy S20 FE. Even a Galaxy S10 might be better, but one of the more recent Galaxy A series of devices like the A50, like the A75 or the A74 that just came out, like get a phone that's still kind of supported and has a decent chipset inside. You are going to be getting in a way better situation, especially compared to a phone that has like one of these like MediaTek, especially one of these phones that has like the MediaTek chipset inside. It's not that great of an experience, and I probably would avoid it, to be honest. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.